She Overcomes inspires, equips, and raises up women to become their boldest selves personally and professionally. Our mission is to empower existing leaders who live with courage and confidence in community. I'm Melanie Rudd, your host and founder of She Overcomes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm so excited to invite Sadie Schaeffer to our to the podcast and to our onto the airwaves. Welcome, Sadie.
Thank you, Melanie.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. So, okay, I love to read the bio because I always want to make sure that I get it right. So, I'm going to read your bio to highlight your awesomeness.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Sadie was born and raised in the small town of Marshall, Minnesota. She came up north to attend school at Concordia College, graduating with a degree in communications with an emphasis in interpersonal and organization communications with a minor in nutrition. You are such an underachiever.
Totally. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm kidding. Sorry.
You're good.
Upon graduating, Sadie moved out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then recently moved back to our area. She's the startup programs manager at Emerging Prairie and personal trainer at West Fargo F45. In her free time, and I don't know how she has any, she enjoys traveling, hiking, playing with her 2 Maltipoo pups, and spending time at the lake with her friends and family.
That's correct. You hit it all.
Nailed it. Yeah,
Yes.
didn't miss a beat,
Yes.
right? I don't know if you know, but I can read.
That was beautiful. Well read, Melanie.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you for coming today. Seriously, that is so funny.
Yeah.
I feel like, so I always kind of think about when I start, I'm like, gosh, okay, how did we meet? What was that? And I feel like it was, you've been at Emerging Prairie for a couple of years, right?
Correct.
And we had just talked about a while ago about just some different women's events and
Yeah.
different ways that we could connect. How long have you been at Emerging Prairie? And like, talk a little bit more about your job there and kind of what you're doing for the community.
Absolutely. So startup programs manager at Emerging Prairie, as you said.
Yeah.
It will be 2 years coming up in November.
Really?
So
Yay.
just about 2 years.
Yeah.
So startup programs manager, work very closely with entrepreneurs in our community in
Yep.
the state of North Dakota, Minnesota, really connecting them to resources and people in our community specifically.
Yeah.
And I think we met at 20 Below for kind of our
we
first
did.
meeting
The
to say
Moorhead
like,
one. Yeah.
how can we engage more women entrepreneurs? And so it's just really fun to watch you grow and scale and empower women with what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I love it. I think I was mentioning to you, so I have, there's 8 kids in my family. 6 of us are girls, 2 are boys. And I think as a woman raised with that many siblings, with that many sisters, I had a lot of opportunities to be like, wow, this works really well. This is terrible.
Yeah.
This is so bad.
Yes.
I've just kind of been through everything.
Yeah.
And so I love my upbringing for that reason, because I feel like it's prepared me to do some of the things that I do now.
Absolutely.
And it also is really like the driving passion for like the why.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you have mentioned, and even with your job at Emerging Prairie, it sounds like you love making people feel seen and heard. How do you do that? How do you cultivate that ability? Because that's a gift. Not everyone has that ability to create a space and an atmosphere for people to experience that.
Yeah. Oh, such a great question. I think it's a couple things. So with both my roles, being a personal trainer at 45 and then also being kind of a community connector at Emerging Prairie, it looks a little different in each of the roles, but I think it's meeting people where they're at. I think that's kind of the first thing. And then really just being a good listener, trying to understand what they need, who they need to be connected to specifically, and just really encouraging them in their journey. As we know, being an entrepreneur is very difficult. It takes a lot of grit, takes a lot of tenacity, and so they need cheerleaders. And then on the other side, being a personal trainer, a lot of people come into the gym and are either unhappy with their body or how they look. And so it's just really being empathetic and understanding their story and how you can best serve them as a coach. So I think it's a mixture of all of all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And have you ever done the like disc assessments or strengths or any of those things?
I love those.
Yeah.
Yes. Big fan of all the personality tests.
Do you know where you're at in some of those?
Okay, so I know my Enneagram and I know my Myers-Briggs.
Okay, yeah.
I've taken DISC, but it's been a while. So I'm an Enneagram 3, which is an achiever, as you can maybe imagine.
No, I have no idea.
And then my Myers-Briggs is the ESFJ. So I think it's called the consultant.
Okay.
There's a whole breakdown for it, but I can't
yeah.
tell you everything about it probably in just this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a 3-4.
Oh, interesting.
Or like
okay.
I vacillate between 4-3 and 3-4.
Yep.
And so for those of you who don't know the Enneagram styles, there's 9. There's 9 different styles, and we can all kind of we go back and forth depending on like whether we're our healthy selves. So there's a shadow side, there's a positive side. And so the 3 is the achiever.
Yes.
The 3 is the person who's like we're going after it, we're getting it. I think the 3 and the 7 a lot of times can be mistaken for one another because 7s are drivers too. They're visionaries. They're like they're going and getting stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's there's just some slight nuances. Yeah, it's really. I had a boss who was a founder who was he described to me that he was a flaming 7.
A flaming, not just a 7, a flaming 7.
Flaming 7. And I was like,
it.
oh my gosh, that tracks. All of the things that I loved and did not love, or I shouldn't say love, I respected and cared for. All the things I liked and did not like all made sense then.
That is funny. I like that.
I'm a flaming 7.
Yeah.
But going into that space of listening, I really think that we are living in a time where people are more interested in being heard than listening and creating. Like that's why I actually kind of want to lean into that. Is like that's a unique skill set to have because so many times it feels like people are seeking more to have like, no, this is what's true. Or, it's very polarizing.
Oh,
or
totally.
Black and white. And so have you always been someone very interested in like creating that safe space to be heard, or is that new?
That's a good question. I think it's something I grew up with, and I think my parents modeled it really well.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's something, I've had, but I think like anything, it's a muscle that you have to consistently work on.
Yeah.
And people love to talk about themselves. And so, and I do too. And so it's just a good reminder that anytime you're meeting somebody new or having a conversation with somebody that you don't know super well, it's just asking questions more about them to get to know them better. And then it makes them feel more connected to you. And I think anybody can do that. It's just tapping into it and practicing it, just like anything else.
Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
When I was in my 20s, I had been a part of a group and it ended up being this really cool community, sometimes not cool. You know what I mean? Every community has like their things, has their warts and all.
Yep.
But one thing I learned in that community, they taught that very, very well, that if you're going into a new situation, and they weren't even like, when you're going to network and build connections, it wasn't even like that. It was just like when you're going in, there's a group of people, look around and see who looks more uncomfortable than you.
Ooh,
like take a minute. If there's
that.
a loner, if there's someone all by themselves, like on their phone, whatever, take a look around, see who looks a little more socially awkward, a little more out of place than you. That's your person. Go over there and do exactly as you said.
Great advice.
Ask, how did you get here? Why are you here? Tell me more about you. And then what it does is if you have social anxiety, it releases the pressure for you to perform. And you're actually legit just like your goal is to make someone else feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And in that, you're building very authentically a connection to that person.
Yeah.
And they even went a step farther and they were like, get that phone number. And during the
I
week,
love that.
give them a buzz. Just say, hey, and at that point, oh my gosh, I'm so old. I'm dating myself. I don't know that we were texting a lot. I mean, it was like T9, very slow texting, you know?
Oh my gosh, throwback.
But they would say, get their phone number. And then throughout the week, give them a call and just be like, hey, was just thinking about you. I hope you're having a great time. Because then it really organically opened this circle. And I didn't know at the time that I can look back and see is that it was like welcoming people to sit at our table.
Absolutely.
Without pressure, without a need to perform, without being cool or flexing or anything. It was just like, hey, you can sit next to me. Do you want to literally come sit by me? And when I had joined that group, I had people do that to me, and I thought they were so weird. And they were like, "Would you like to have coffee this week?" And I was like, "No, I literally just met you." Like I was pretty, at the time I had a lot of anxiety and I was really dealing with some personal stuff. And so I remember 2 girls, they're like doing that to me, and I'm like, why are they so nice? Like I was
nice.
so cynical.
Yeah.
And then they asked me to coffee, and at that time I was like, to do what? Like, what's the purpose of our coffee? Like I was so
to drink coffee or to actually connect. You want to get to know me?
Funny. Yeah. And so anyway, it is, and I think I look back at those experiences of learning just little tiny things.
The power of little connections.
So for anyone who has social anxiety, and you
totally.
You're in charge of Startup Brew right on Wednesday mornings.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Emerging Prairie, and that's a perfect place to practice, you guys. So go to Startup Brew.
I love it. Little plug for Startup Brew. Yes.
I love Startup Brew. Okay. All right. So, and speaking of which, that kind of goes into the next question I have for you. So one of your core values is building community. It's just it's who you are.
Yeah.
So can you talk more about that? And even with Startup Brew or other ways in F45 or whatever, how are you doing that? What does that look like practically, step by step, maybe to the person who's like, I have social anxiety, I cannot.
Yeah.
What would you say in that space?
Yeah, I love this question so much. I think community personally is not something I had thought about until post-college.
Yeah.
Because community is just like so integrated into like school life and athletics growing up. And then you leave college and then you're like, but I'm not in school anymore. Yeah. Right? I'm working. But like, how do you find community outside work? So moved to Pittsburgh for a few years, was kind of the middle of the pandemic. So that was crazy.
Ouch.
But moving, seriously. But then moving back to Fargo, I was like, I want to find my people again. I had some friends kind of still in the area, but things change and you still need to find other friends in the community. And so Emerging Prairie is great because it's a community of connected people in the entrepreneurial world, which very close with a lot of my coworkers. And then obviously coaching at F45, I've actually got to meet a ton of awesome like-minded people kind of in that industry. And then also through our church too, we're part of a married couple married couples in our group. And so those are kind of my 3 communities that I have. But I would say for people seeking out community, I think start small, right? Yeah. Like, what is it that you're interested in outside of your work area? Like, are you into fitness? Then maybe check out a group fitness gym. You'll be able to meet some people in that area. Are you interested in volleyball? Maybe try a sand volleyball league. So fun. Yeah. So fun. And so I think it is starting small. And I think for extroverts, it does come a little bit easier. I am extroverted. Like, I'm motivated by being around people. But if you are introverted or you do have social anxiety, like smaller groups are better. And so again, just really starting, I think, where your passion is will kind of lead you to that next step. And maybe it's something kind of like you were talking about earlier, like asking one person to grab coffee, asking one coworker to go to the Red River Market on Saturday. Like it doesn't have to be large group fitness classes, large volleyball sessions. Like it can be something small, but on a practical level, I think really starting where your passion is because you're going to have like-minded people in those areas.
So I love that. And I have to just say, and I'm sorry, not sorry, with the program that we've written with She Overcomes, it's a huge part of it is community. A huge part of it is almost remembering how to be a part of community.
Yeah, so important.
And I want to take it one step further because something we talk about in there is a sense of belonging. Yes. And so like so it's like we have these community events and someone can show up at an event, but at what point do you see the transition into like, now I belong?
Yeah,
how do you take it to that one step further to belonging and not just like, but I showed up and now I still feel like I'm an outsider looking in?
I love that. Okay, so I read when I moved to Pittsburgh a book called Find Your People. I think it's by Jeannie Allen. And it kind of talks about like community and people like an onion or like a tree. And so you can have like 4 people in your core group. 10 people in your friend group. I'm not probably. And then like 30 people in your community. So like obviously the larger the circle gets, like the harder it is to dive deeper. But I think that finding that core group few things there. Like, I'm sure everybody has friends and family all over, right?
Yep.
But like, how do you locally find it?
Right.
And I think it's when you kind of have those bigger groups, whether it's your work, your church, your gym, volleyball, cohort, whatever.
Right.
It's again asking for coffee, asking for that deeper one-on-one type relationship. And then I think it really is formed when you're going through a rough spot in your life. So like you go through a hiccup, you go through something traumatic, and you're able to reach out to that person and they're able to sit down with you and you're able to be vulnerable and not feel shame or judgment. And they're just like, I'm here for you. I think that's when you dive deeper. It could be something small, right? It could just be, hey, I'm reaching out, Melanie, like I just had a tough day at work. Can we grab a drink? Can we grab dinner? I want to talk. It doesn't have to be a massive life event. Right. But I think when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in front of other people, it takes those walls down that we're not perfect. And I think that's when true friendship and community has been formed in my life.
Oh, I love that so much. You know, we were talking about that group I was in my 20s, and one thing that I noticed there, almost just to piggyback on what you said, is they taught us a lot about service. And so it was like, so here's where some of the basics. One basic was, if you feel awkward, surely someone else does. Go make them feel comfortable. That's your job now. My job is to now make you feel comfortable, and it gets the focus off of you, right? Because we are so self-focused.
Oh, I mean, totally. Totally, yeah.
And the second thing was then to like actually do the coffee, actually do the stuff. But the second thing was at this group to get a job. And I thought that was, I remember being like, dumb. Like, you know, like, I mean, I was like,
seems
20,
obvious. Seems obvious. Yeah.
20 years old, I'm joining this group. And not in like the best headspace. I'll say I was in college and kind of lost. And
sounds like it was helpful though for you.
It was actually a practical tool. So what they said was get a job, not like, I mean, a job that pays, yes, but within the group. I don't remember my first job. I think my first job was to like, they had cookies, and I put out, my job was to put out cookies.
Serve the tray cookies. I love it. Everyone probably loved you.
I was a celebrity. Just kidding. But what I didn't know that it was doing at the time is it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me a reason to be there because, and I know how simple this sounds. Yeah. If I wasn't there, who would set out those cookies?
Oh, I know. There wouldn't be cookies.
There would be no sugar, and everybody would be so sad. And
you got it right.
They would blame me. And so the people pleaser inside of me was like, I need to be there because I need to execute said job. Yes. And they were like, no job is too small. And so whether you're bringing cookies, whether you're cleaning the toilets, whether you're doing whatever, your job is important. And I think for me, it created organically that sense of belonging because now I have some responsibility and I'm not just a consumer. Yes. And I think sometimes we accidentally, I don't think anybody's like, I would love to be a consumer. No one is like that. Most people are not. Yeah. They want to be included. They want to belong. They want to fit. Not fit. Fitting in is the opposite of belonging. Yes. Actually, because you're now masking who you are in order to be a part. And that's just so we differentiate that.
Love that.
But it gave me a reason to feel like I was contributing and not consuming. Yes. And then I felt a sense of ownership. So now I have stepped into owning part of the success, one little tiny piece of this puzzle where I'm like, oh, I'm needed. I'm valuable. I don't want to skip.
This matters.
Yeah, it matters. And so it's it's like little tiny baby
Very
steps
powerful.
into belonging where it's that next step from community into like now I'm chit-chatting with, so then someone else's job, they were the bringer of the cookies. I was the setter of the cookies out, you know?
You had a connection because you had to communicate about how the process was going to happen.
And now we're chatting and, you know, and so it's just, it's really interesting because these are like little tiny things that can shift people, but it will shift you from like, in some cases, from feeling useless, hopeless, depressed to like, no, actually, my contribution matters. That person's day is different because when you do this all the time. Yeah. When you ask someone about themselves, they light up. Yeah. They're like, oh, you noticed. Yeah. Oh, you noticed me.
That matters.
I'm not just a ghost or whatever. You know. And so I could go on and on.
The power of cookies. I think you need a podcast on that.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then do you want to know it? And then I'm going to have the producers put like, remember SNL? Okay, this is totally
yes.
You guys want some cookies?
Yes. That's how it starts. Yep. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, note that.
Too good.
Guys, okay. Okay. So one of the phrases I always love people asking or answering that question of what are phrases that inspire you or quotes, and I've talked about some of mine. But yours is from your dad?
Yes.
Right? And it is, you pick your attitude, so you might as well pick a good one.
Yes. So
okay, let's talk about that.
I was going to say, Dad, if you're listening, you're going to love this because I was not a fan of this when I was younger.
Yeah.
He typically would say it in the morning when I was waking up because I was kind of cranky and moody in the morning.
Yeah.
And so he'd be like, okay, Sadie, it's a new day. You pick your attitude, so you might as well pick a good one. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever, Dad.
Yeah.
But now it truly, like, he pounded it into me as a child and probably not even knowing that, like, it is stuck with me. Like, my dad is one of the most positive people I know. Yeah. And so it truly has stuck with me. And I'm a big believer in, like, no matter what you're going through in your personal life, you can always present in a positive manner. Like, you could be grieving the loss of a loved one. You could have a sick one at home and you can put a smile on your face, meet the person right where they're at. Yeah. And not to say that we can't talk about the bad or the ugly or the things that are going on behind the scenes. Yeah. But I think truly, like, the attitude we carry, like, it is either an energy giver or it's an energy sucker. Yeah. And so I think the world would be a lot better place if we, one, confronted those things that we're going through right in the community that we are part of. Yeah. And then also just chose a good attitude to present to the person in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that because I think that there is that, like, toxic positivity or, like, one author that I read about calls it, like, spiritual bypassing. I'm just gonna be like, well, but God is good, or just kind of be like, not experience the grief of the moment. Yeah. But it's not like an either or. I've come to believe it's a yes and.
Yes.
It's like,
absolutely.
yes, I'm experiencing this hard thing. Yeah. I'm gonna acknowledge that. I'm gonna weep when I need to weep. I'm gonna do my thing. But there is goodness. Like, joy really does come in the morning.
It does. Yeah.
Even through the hard times.
Yeah.
I think I'd mentioned to you, one of my sisters was on here and we had talked about, I was really depressed at 18. There's a lot of stuff happening in my life. And I was really depressed and I did this painting. I'm a painter. I don't know if you know.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. That's amazing.
Okay. I'm going to just do one of these. I actually won most artistic of my class.
Melanie,
I was the class.
Look at you.
Most artistic. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I've restarted paint. I'm restarting.
Those superlatives. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, class of 2000, Holly, Minnesota. You guys were and are the best. But I had painted this really sad painting and anyway, it just had so much grief in it, and because I was so sad. And my dad was like, Melanie, did you name that as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death? I sat down and took a break.
I love it. Yes, Dad. Yes.
Like, can't you just let me experience my sadness? Like, I
That's
just wanted
amazing,
to, like,
though, to be able to, like, paint and let it out. Like, I don't have that avenue, and I wish I did. So that's amazing.
I do love it. And I used to do commissions for people, for clients, when I was doing interior design. And I actually had to stop because it created so much anxiety. The people pleasing, I had to, like, be like, okay, listen, I will never do a commission again. I will paint and I will do what I want. Yes. But I cannot do commissions. Oh, I could. Fair. I just didn't want to.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's understandable. So,
but it's that idea, like, we honor the emotion, we experience it, and we choose gratitude. Yeah. Because gratitude really has the power to change your mind. Yeah. And so, like,
and I think, I was just going to add, and I think kind of going into that a little bit more, and this is kind of a whole other tangent on that, but like the power of saying no, like if you are in a headspace where you're like, I know that I can't choose a positive attitude or an energy that's going to be life-giving to the people around me, I'm going to say no to this obligation to stay home and deal with the things that I need to deal with. So yes, and like you said, totally.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think of, so one of the phrases that you had shared was adversity creates growth and also health is wealth. But I want to talk about the first one first, okay?
Okay.
So tell me more about that, about adversity creating growth, maybe from an experience or observations. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh gosh, where do I begin? I feel like there have been so many circumstances in my life. I am a big believer in comfortability. Comfortability creates complacency.
I 100% agree.
A lot of
with you.
C's there. It's kind of a mouthful to say.
Yeah.
So
No, it's
comfortability, yes, creates complacency. And not to say like I don't want to be uncomfortable 100% of my life.
Yeah.
But
no.
like there are situations and scenarios that happen that make you go outside your comfort zone, go outside your community, help you grow in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, honestly, a big one for me was graduating college during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like there was so much uncertainty in that. And like nobody was hiring. And also my boyfriend, who is my husband now, was living in Pennsylvania and going to school out there.
Oh, yeah. I was actually going to ask you why you moved there. Okay.
Yes,
Makes sense.
yes.
All right. It's tracking. Go
No,
ahead.
you're good. And so it was just a lot of uncertainty of one, nobody's hiring. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Everything is shut down. But I also want to go live closer to my boyfriend, who I've been doing distance with for so long. And I ended up moving out to Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Got a job, but there was also a ton of uncertainty when I moved out there because I didn't know a single person aside from my boyfriend, who was still going to school, who was playing hockey. And so there was a lot of adversity in that story, just being a fresh grad, new career, trying to meet people, trying to find community, navigating a whole new city, let alone state, when I'm 18 hours away from my family. So in a sense, I did feel a little bit lost, but I did meet some really good friends along the way. And I think that's where community makes the world of a difference. Like if you don't have community through tough times, like it's hard. Like we are made to have companions, to have friends. Like it truly does take a tribe, a village to support and uplift you. So that was a big area where I just feel like I really grew in my adult life. And then obviously moving back and learning how to create community again, like it goes back to like it is a muscle. I am extroverted, and I do like being around people, but it doesn't mean it's always the first choice to go seek out new friendships or new community. But I think it's just with anything, like there's always opportunities. Like for example, one of my good friends that I met through the gym moving back, she just moved to Bozeman, Montana. And I'm one, super excited for her, but two, extremely sad because when you do find your people and they leave, it's so hard.
It's the worst.
It's so hard. And so I'm looking at this as like, okay, God, this is an opportunity for a door to open for another relationship to be made because sisterhood, friendship, community, it is so important to me to have those close people.
Well, and you know, I think you're interesting too. And so you have talked about being in your church group and environment and the couples group, and then like leaning on God. Like, how much of has your faith impacted? Would you say like your worldview or some of the things that you're doing right now? Because there's that spiritual aspect that not everyone will necessarily align with. But in most,
absolutely.
A lot of transformational relationships oftentimes have that additional component.
Yeah, that's a great question. Few things. So, I mean, obviously religion for some people is not necessarily a thing. For me, it's a very personal relationship with God. And I think it's seeking out other friends that also have similar beliefs. And again, kind of being like-minded in that community. And so it's been super fun to be in like a married couples group. And
can I ask you how long you guys have been married? Is that?
Yeah, we've been married for just over 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
okay. Congratulations. I wasn't sure. Like,
no questions off limits.
Okay.
And so, gosh, what was I going to say? Yes, being in like-minded group. And then also I'm a firm believer in that like serving other people is loving them well. And it's leading well. And I think we'll probably get into this a little bit later. But one of my goals was to volunteer with a new organization every single month this year. Which it's just, I think, a great way to give back to the community and also show God's love in not an extremely explicit way, but just to kind of love on other groups throughout our community as well.
Well, and that's like the whole, you know, I know like religion itself is complicated, but like the love of God shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
And so like, I couldn't give you the address of this, but like they will know you by your love. Is, I think, something really important. And I think, unfortunately, at times, the faith community is missed hard. They've missed it hard. And so, like...
It can be hypocritical, which I think a lot of people have been hurt by that. So
100%, you know? So the fact that you're like, actually, the way that I show love is in service. It's acts of service to other people. And I think that that's really beautiful because I think that is... When people then, when you're going to these organizations and when you're going into this serving community... They're going to say, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why did you come?
Yeah.
And then that's an opportunity just to be like, this is what
Open
I
up.
believe in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Are you willing to share, like, what are some of those places that
Yeah.
you're serving, and like, what have you seen and learned, and
Yeah.
how have you grown from that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not typically one to set New Year's resolutions because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I think most of them fail and most of mine have failed.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just like, I'm not going to set a New Year's resolution, but I just wanted a goal to kind of touch some different organizations this year. Have not been perfect. I think I've missed 2 months.
Yeah.
But the first one I did was Feed My Starving Children in January.
Yeah,
and I think I did that like in middle school helping pack, but I've never done it here in Fargo.
Yeah.
And it just so amazing to know that like one is a Christian organization, and two, like, literally you see the impact of like we are feeding children through this ministry.
Yeah.
And so that was super cool. So I did it with my husband, and then I did it with a few of my coworkers. So I actually went back twice and did that. So that was super cool. That was probably the only one that was not local. The rest of them have been pretty local. Like I went to Hope Blooms, which I am not a florist. I don't have a green thumb. I kill most of my plants. So it was so I was like, oh, this is a little outside of my comfort zone. But it was so fun. Like I met a lot of, I think it was predominantly women, which I mean checks out. But it was, it just was so fun to like make the little bouquets, and then they bring them to nursing homes and like refurbish them, because I think a lot of their blooms come from like Hornbachers and local florists that they can only have on the floor for a certain time, and so they'd be thrown away anyways.
Wow, I actually didn't know that.
It's really
I feel
cool.
like I've only known Hope Blooms from afar. I should actually have her on here.
Yes, she'd be great. And it's just a super cool way to go in. Like I think it was just 2 hours making those bouquets and knowing that like it's going to brighten someone's day. And then it was so cute. They take pictures with some of the people that they send them to. And they're like, we'll bring them to guys in the nursing homes too, because guys deserve flowers. They deserve a smile.
Right.
And so that was super fun. Volunteered with my church in the kitchen. They have like a youth night. Where they do like a play and they feed everyone. And so we just kind of helped prep in the kitchen. That was just a good way to meet some other folks from the church.
Yeah.
What else have I done? I volunteered at the Restore for Habitat for Humanity. So I was involved with Habitat during college, and I think we volunteered at a Restore on one of our trips, but I've never volunteered in a local Restore. And that was my most recent one. They shared some crazy facts. I think it was, they have over 40,000 visitors per year. Don't quote me on that, but it was something crazy. And they shared that 80% of the people there that receive and buy, their goods would not be able to afford them elsewhere. And so it also is just a very cool ministry. They can pick up furniture if you have furniture to, if you're like redoing your house, or you no longer want your couch in your living room, you can call them. They'll come pick it up free of charge. It's taken off your hands, and then it goes to a good organization. So those are just a couple few that I've done, but it's just been really cool to see different parts of the community, because I am decently community facing in my role with entrepreneurs and then being at the gym. But I think serving nonprofits and charities is just another way to feel a place of belonging, to meet new people, and then also just understand like all of the resources that we do have in the area to serve our local community. It's just a really cool way to get involved.
And I love that you said that, like, because I think at the risk of being like, Sadie, you are the most awesome person, and you are the most awesome person.
Thanks, Melanie. Right back at ya.
It could be easy to be like, wow, you're so great. And that's I'm like, you are.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense, because that sense of belonging is so deeply rooted in the community.
Absolutely.
And so, like, again, it leads back to, are you feeling isolated? To the person listening, are you feeling isolated? Are you feeling alone?
Yeah.
This is a great strategy for getting out of your head. This is a great strategy to say, you know what, I maybe don't have X, Y, or Z, but I have some time right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to Feed My Starving Children. I'm going to go to these places, because certainly someone has less than I do.
Yes.
And I can belong here and serve that community. So I love that for that purpose,
And for the people listening, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have time, like some of these have just been an hour at a time. Like the Hope Blooms, I went over my lunch break from noon to 1. Like Feed My Starving Children was, I think, longer increments. And so whatever you have time for, but I truly am a firm believer in we make time for the things that are important to us, right? And so if you say this is important to me, you're going to make an effort to do it.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember who says it. It could be Dave Ramsey, but it's like, if you want to know what's important, check your calendar and your checkbook.
Yes.
You'll find out what's important to you real quick. If you want to know versus what you say is important.
So true.
Yeah. Check those two things. Yeah. And then we can circle back and make a plan for you.
Love it.
So, you have your personality. You have said like being bold or stepping into like having courage is something that's a little bit more natural. Will you talk like more about that, and even more to the person who, if it's not natural, think about those baby steps that they maybe could take?
Oh, love this one too. Again, I'll go back to, I think boldness for some people is probably very natural.
Yeah.
I would say it was not to me until my adult life. Like I remember driving on my own for the first time, like after I got my driver's license, and being like, everyone's looking at me. They're watching me park. Like seriously, it sounds ridiculous saying that out loud now. I don't think I've ever said that out loud.
Yeah, it's not.
Or even like going to the grocery store on my own after I left my parents' house. Like that felt weird, because it felt like everyone was watching me.
Right.
So I think it's the more you do something, the better you become. We were kind of talking about this earlier. Like I'm on this sort of brief stage all the time, but the first 10 times felt extremely awkward. Yeah. But then you kind of find your rhythm. You understand what works, what doesn't work. And so I think it really is kind of going back to earlier, going through that adversity a little bit, going through that discomfort. Yeah. Because it makes you grow into something. And then once you become sort of comfortable in an area, you feel a little bit more confident. You feel a little bit more bold, and then you can switch it up a little bit.
Right.
So it does take time. It definitely, I would say during college and after college, I've really kind of figured out the areas I can be bold in because I feel confident in those areas. Right. But then I think there are areas too where I'm not super confident in. And so I don't feel as bold in those areas, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to totally confess something to you.
Please do. I just confessed something to you. So,
so I used to do a lot of public speaking.
Okay.
And then went through some personal stuff in my life, and I lost my voice.
Yeah.
Not actually physically. Yeah. Like I have friends who like literally she could not talk or sing, but it was like I went through a time I lost all my confidence. I lost any self-trust, worth. And so I in that dark season, I lost my voice. Yeah. And then I took a job where I had to do public speaking, and I refused for a whole year. And I'm like, I'm not gonna. Goodness. Oh, no, yeah, I told him, like, I'm not doing that. And he was like, you literally got hired to do that. Yeah. You have to do that. And and so it was that poor boss. If you're listening, I'm sorry. But I feel sort of sorry for him because he was in the dark night of my soul with me apparently. Yeah. But anyway, so finally he was like, you actually have to. So I started to, and I would do it shaky, and I would do it scared. Yeah. I would have like panic attacks, anxiety attacks. And then finally, after a year, it took me a year of doing it ugly and messy and scared. I was able to finally kind of like come out of that. Yeah. But I didn't practice. It. And then I ended up leaving that job. And later, so I have a manuscript that's with a publisher right now, and it's coming out soon.
Exciting.
So you guys,
stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned on that. I do have a tentative release date, but
yay.
But I had been talking to an agent at the time, and she had said to me, "You're going to need to get comfortable speaking on stages about this if you want, if we're going through publishing." Yeah. So, in an effort to practice and be courageous, I put together a 90-second pitch and pitched it at TEDx. Yeah. So
amazing.
A couple years ago I did that. And I cried. I literally, because I saw you guys did like this. I did. Yeah. Yes. I went up. I had it all memorized. I had practice and practice and practice. Yep. I went up. I think it was back when Emerging Prairie was above what used to be the Chinese restaurant. So now I think it's Chase or something, so that it was in that location, their old location. I went up there, got on stage, and of course, in your mind when you feel humiliated, you're like 7,000 people were there, probably 40. Yeah, but you know what I mean. But like in that
it feels worse. Yes, so much worse.
I got the first sentence out, burst into tears.
Oh,
in front of everybody, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I have to move. I can't live in Fargo. I literally was like, it's probable that I'll have to move and take a remote job where I sit behind a desk because I was mortified. Anyway,
that is crazy? And of everyone that still remembers it, it's probably just you, right?
Just
like
me.
But crazy.
So funny. So then the agent was like, well, need more practice.
Yep, exactly.
And that
you get back up and try again.
That that was why I ran for Mrs. North Dakota, because it was an opportunity to just do some public speaking, and I was like, never thought I would win.
Yeah,
I literally did it so that I could practice a talk, and then I ended up winning, and I was like, oh no,
more public speaking is in your future.
So luckily I got over it. Luckily, but it's a muscle, no different, Well, and so it's this muscle, and now I'm like, okay, you can't let it atrophy.
Yeah.
Like when you've overcome something, it's not like, did it, I'm awesome, and now I never have to do it again. It's like, no. Now you keep practicing. Now you pick up a bigger weight.
Yes.
Now you start running farther,
And like you've just spoken to, it's not about how many times you fall down. It's about how many times you get back up.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're all going to fail. And I think that just shows the humanness of, like, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But like you owned it. You got back up.
It's mine.
So, yep. You didn't move away. You didn't take a remote job.
No, I know. I was going to, I'm like, I have to leave town. I have to leave town and never return. I went home and cried. Cried.
Oh,
and then I did like it was really good for me. It was actually very healing, and I did it, and it nailed that idea down. Like, no. Just because you overcame once doesn't actually mean this will forever be.
It's a continuous. Oh, you have to get up every day.
Yeah. No. So there we go.
Oh, I love that. That's a great story, though.
Okay. I have two more. Yeah, thank you. It's so hilarious. Now it's hilarious. And actually, I was like, I should try out again, but I could have done that.
Maybe next year. Maybe next
year will be my year. Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. I want to hit two more things before I let you go today.
Okay.
But you said that your life is not linear. That our lives are not linear.
Yeah.
And so this can be both scary and freeing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about like how you've talked about a positive mindset? You've talked about adversity when it's not linear, when you're going through those fears, like how do you embrace growth?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So very specific, tangible story I'll share is, so right out of college, moved to Pennsylvania, got a corporate sales role. Was in that role for about a year, and it just was not everything that it was cracked up to be. Yeah. And so I put my 2 weeks in, didn't know what was next. It was terrifying because I was 18 hours away from family. Yeah. I didn't know a lot of people because we're in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. But I think with every closed door, God opens another door. Mm-hmm. And I'd been working out at Orange Theory at the time for probably 6 months at that point. Yeah. Went to my workout that day and was like, are you guys by chance hiring? So like, I've always loved health, nutrition, fitness, minored in nutrition in college. And they were like, we're pretty much always hiring coaches. And I was like, okay, amazing. What do I need to do? Like, I will do it. So you have to get your personal trainer certification. So I was like, okay, amazing. Like I applied, I got my personal trainer certification, but I'd already put in my 2 weeks. And so after I'd put in my 2 weeks, I studied, I think for like 3 or 4 weeks to get my personal trainer cert, took the test, passed the test, got employed by Orange Theory. But like at the time going through that, I remember just like coming home again. I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own rent. Like I'm a full grown adult now because I was used to like being in college, my parents were very helpful. And then like, I mean, they would have helped if I would have needed it, but I was like, I'm going to do this. Right. I can do this. So it just got to a point where it was just a little bit of a toxic work environment. Couldn't take it anymore. And so I think most people expect like, okay, you get a job and then you get a better job and then you get a better job and then you get a raise. And it's not always like that. It's not like that. No, it's not always like that. No. And so it was scary being jobless for 3-4 weeks, but I knew there was another step coming. And so moved into my full-time coaching role. And what that looks like is completely different than a corporate job. Yeah. I was working 4 a.m. to noon. And then I had kind of like the afternoons off. I actually took a nanny gig for an after-school family. Yeah. And so I was nannying in the evenings. And then I would sometimes work they call it a clopen. So you close one night and you open the next morning. So you're at the gym till like 9 p.m. Oh my gosh. And then you have to be at the gym like 4:30, 4 a.m. the next day. And so just extremely different lifestyle, extremely different hours, was making way less than I did in a corporate sales role. But for me, that didn't matter. Yeah. what mattered is that I was doing something that I was passionate about. And I felt like I was helping people at the gym. I loved the community at the gym. And I was like, I'm never going to go back to corporate world. I'm never going to work an office job because I was like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And when we moved back here, I did personal training for a while.
Yeah.
But the schedule, as you can imagine, is a little difficult. But I still love being in the gym. And so when this position opened up with Emerging Prairie, I was like, this seems like a great fit.
Yeah.
A little bit of sales, a little bit of events, a lot of coffee meetings, chatting with entrepreneurs, hearing their story and how I can help. So took that job, and then now I'm part-time with F45. So it truly is the best of both worlds, but it's not linear. And I'm sure my next choice or move, it might be linear, it might be to the side, it might be, I guess, what some consider a downgrade. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know what's coming next, but I think the thing for a lot of people is we focus so much on what other people think about us and what other people think about our jobs. And truly at the end of the day, as long as you are making enough money to sustain your lifestyle and you are passionate about what you're doing and you're somehow making a difference in the community of those around you, I think that's truly what matters.
Yeah.
And so to me, going from that corporate sales role to personal training full time was the right move.
Yeah.
It was scary.
Yeah.
But I also am a big believer in that, when things feel scary, that's when you jump. That's when you go. That's when you have to muster up the courage and put the work in to make it work.
Do it scared.
Yep.
That's right. You just
do it scared. Takes 30 seconds of courage, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember what movie that comes from.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a good one. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my last question to you is, if you could sit your younger self down and tell her one thing, what would you say?
I have to pick one thing.
I mean, one or two.
Okay. That's really hard. I was going to say two things come to mind. Find your people. Mm-hmm. So obviously your family are there for you. You can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends. So find your people, and then care less about what others think about you that are not your people.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So that when other people try to call you something else, you're like,
yep,
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm who I am.
And that people pleaser in us doesn't come out as much because you know who you are, you know your worth, and you know your people.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, Sadie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good.
It was so fun.
Oh, well, you're the best. And
you're the best.
We both had some big disclosing of things today.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Feels good though. It's freeing.
Good, right? Oh my gosh. All right. Well, okay, Overcomer. If you like the podcast, please rate it and share it with a friend. We want to see all women walk in their authority and power as bold leaders in each sphere of influence that they belong to. Remember, you are stronger than you think you are.